At 11:30 on a Tuesday morning, my wife set a black overnight bag on our kitchen counter. The zipper teeth caught the light, sharp and final, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt like I was looking at a weapon instead of luggage. Lauren said the words like she was testing a recipe. Casual, almost cheerful. One night, a hall pass, just before we start trying for a baby. I watched her hands fold a silk nightgown, the kind she never wore for me anymore, and slide it into the bag like evidence sealed in plastic. My throat was dry, but I didn't raise my voice. Anger isn't yelling, it's building a line so straight you can't step back over it. Listen close, I told her. If you check into a hotel with Ethan Blake, our marriage checks out the second that door clicks shut. That's not a warning. That's the rule. Her face twitched, the smallest flinch, but she covered it with a half smile like she was auditioning for a part. You don't have to be dramatic, she said. I leaned my palm on the counter, steady as a level. Not drama. Boundary. You want one night? Fine. But you don't walk back through this door afterward and pretend it didn't happen. You choose him, you lose me. That's the measurement, square and true. For years, I'd let things slide, her late nights, the vague explanations, the friends who always seemed to cover for her. I built cabinets for a living, and I know the difference between a seam that needs sanding and one that splits the whole frame. This was the split. She tried to laugh it off, tried to make me the stiff one, the guy too rigid to live a little. But the truth was in that bag. A nightgown, perfume, a toothbrush still in the package. She wasn't improvising, she was planning. I didn't give her the scene she wanted. No shouting, no slamming doors. Just a man putting down a rule he could enforce. I picked up her black bag, zipped it shut, and set it back on the counter. Take it, I said. Take the night. But when that door clicks, so does everything we built. For a long moment, we stood across the counter like two people in a standoff. Her with her soft eyes turned hard, me with calloused hands that had built every stick of furniture in that house. And then she looked away first. The kitchen clock ticked. Outside, a delivery truck rattled past. The world didn't stop spinning just because my marriage did. She turned, grabbed the bag, and walked toward the door. I let her. I didn't chase. I didn't plead. Men who chase end up watching the same scene replay over and over until there's nothing left of them but dust. When the door shut, I stood alone in the kitchen, hands still pressed flat against the counter's oak grain. My father used to say oak doesn't lie. It splits clean, it tells you where it's weak. Marriage should be the same. You see the fault lines, you pay attention. Ignore them, and one day the whole frame buckles. That morning, I saw the fault line, and I did what men are supposed to do. I marked it, measured it, and made it clear that once it broke, there'd be no repair job. Lauren thought this was a test, one she could ace by walking out and coming back with crocodile tears. But it wasn't a test. It was a contract written in plain speech. No one cheats on a marriage by accident. I poured a cup of coffee, black and bitter, and sat at the table where we'd once planned a family. The chair opposite me was empty now, and in that silence I realized I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was afraid of wasting another decade pretending weakness was strength. By the time the coffee cooled, my decision was set in stone. She could take the black bag, but she wasn't taking me for a fool. I drove her, not to Ethan's, not to some hotel, but to her parents' porch where the bulb burned yellow against the siding. The black bag sat between us in the truck cab, heavy with more than clothes. Neither of us spoke until she realized she'd left a travel toothbrush behind. She laughed nervously, like that detail made it normal. I reached into the glove box, pulled it out, and handed it to her. Here, don't forget the small things. She wanted me to crack, to argue, to beg, to remind her of vows she already treated like fine print. Instead, I repeated the rule the way a carpenter checks his line twice before cutting. Remember what I told you. The second that the hotel door clicks, this is over. Not paused, not forgiven. Over. Her parents' house loomed in the headlights. Safe, ordinary. She hesitated with the bag on her lap, staring at me like she was waiting for softness. For me to say I didn't mean it, but I'd already meant it. I'd meant it the moment I saw the silk nightgown slide into that bag. She opened the door, the porch light catching the edge of her face. "You're really serious. Dead serious," I said. "If you're going to gamble, at least know the stakes." She stepped out, bag slung over her shoulder, and the truck door thudded shut. I didn't drive off fast or slow. I just let the tires roll steady back toward our house. The road a ribbon of reflection I had no interest in cutting short with words I'd regret. Back home, the house felt bigger than I remembered. Empty air has weight when you know it's not coming back filled. I set my keys in the bowl by the door and walked room to room, the silence greeting me like an old dog nobody else cared to feed. The living room still smelled faintly of her perfume, sweet but hollow. The bedroom carried the echo of arguments we never finished. And in the garage, against the far wall, sat the unfinished rocking chair I'd started months ago. Oak arms sanded smooth, seat frame waiting for slats. I ran my hand over the grain, felt the potential in the wood, and realized I'd left more love in that chair than she'd left in me the past year. The phone buzzed in my pocket. Her name lit the screen. First a text, "I'm not doing anything wrong." Then another, "Don't punish me for needing space." Then one from her friend Brittany Carter, the ever-present spin doctor, lecturing me about trust and modern marriages. I didn't reply. Silence is a tool, sharper than any chisel in my workshop. Arguments are for people still auditioning for each other. I wasn't auditioning anymore. I left the phone on the counter and poured another cup of coffee. The clock ticked louder in an empty kitchen, each second a reminder that peace is louder than chaos when you let it be. I thought about my father. He'd yell, slam doors, make a show of it. My mother would shrink into the wallpaper, and nothing ever changed. I swore years ago I wouldn't carry his weakness forward. Real strength isn't in the volume, it's in the posture. So I sat in that quiet, no TV, no radio, just me and the hum of the refrigerator. And I let the stillness do what noise never could: settle the dust. By midnight, the texts slowed. By 1, they stopped. I didn't chase her words, didn't call to check if she was safe, didn't scroll through excuses typed in haste. I knew exactly where she was headed, and I'd already told her what that meant. In the garage, I picked up the mallet and tapped a tenon into place on the chair frame. Each strike was measured, controlled, and squared. That's how I wanted to be remembered, measured and controlled. Not the fool with his head in his hands while his wife played house with another man. When the last joint fit tight, I set the mallet down and looked at what I'd built so far. Incomplete but honest. That's more than I could say for her. The porch light she'd walked under hours earlier wasn't mine to control. But the light in this house was. And from here on out, it would burn steady, even if I was the only one left to see it. Lauren never locked her laptop. Not because she trusted me, but because she believed I'd never bother looking. That Tuesday night, the house was quiet enough to hear the furnace click on and off, the kind of silence that sharpens your instincts. Her MacBook sat open on the kitchen island, the screen glowing like an invitation. Our wedding day password still worked, the date carved on the inside of my ring. Part of me expected nothing, some Pinterest boards, maybe a shopping cart full of shoes. Instead, what started back was a record. Not a whim, not an accident. A timeline. Email confirmations for hotel reservations under her name, each one marked with the same day of the week. Threads with Ethan Blake where they joked about cover stories. A document titled "If He Asks." A script of excuses. And chat logs with Brittany Carter, her self-appointed lawyer friend, spelling out how Mark never pushes back and how he'll fold like he always does. I sat down, jaw locked, and scrolled. Every line was a nail in a coffin she thought I'd never build. This wasn't a hall pass. This was construction, months of measuring, planning, and laying foundations behind my back. I didn't rage. I didn't slam the laptop shut or throw it against the wall. Instead, I opened the drawer under the printer and pulled out a fresh ream of paper. One by one, I printed everything. Emails, chats, drafts, the hotel reservations. The hum of the printer was steady, each sheet a piece of lumber I stacked in neat piles. When the last page slid into the tray, I sorted them into labeled stacks, dates, messages, plans. I took out a manila folder, slid the papers inside, and tucked it under the truck title in the lockbox. Proof doesn't argue. Proof doesn't beg. Proof just sits there, unshakable, waiting for daylight. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the folder. My anger wanted action, a midnight drive, a confrontation that would leave words ringing in the air. But I remembered my mother's voice telling me once, anger makes a scene, patience makes a case. So I made a case. Her phone buzzed again on the counter. Another text, some attempt at reassurance. I ignored it and opened a fresh notebook instead. On the first page, I wrote the date. Then I listed every discovery like I was clocking hours on a job site. 9:45 p.m., printed hotel reservation for April 3rd. 10:12 p.m., chat log with Brittany confirming plan to use work trip excuse. By the time I finished, 2 pages were filled with times, dates, and names. I wasn't just angry, I was building a foundation she couldn't wiggle out from under. I closed the notebook, slid it on top of the folder, and exhaled slowly. The house was still. But in that stillness, I felt something shift. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't guessing. I wasn't doubting myself or wondering if I was too rigid. I had evidence. Ink over rumor. Paper over whispers. I walked to the garage and pulled down the chain on the light bulb. The rocking chair frame sat where I'd left it, waiting. I brushed sawdust off the armrest and thought about how wood doesn't lie. You can see every line, every knot, every weakness right there on the surface. People, though, they paint over the grain, cover the cracks, sell you on a finish that won't hold. But when you stand it down, when you look close, the truth is always there. That night, I sanded the chair in silence, steady strokes of the paper cutting through old layers. Every scrape was a reminder. I wasn't going to let her bury me under excuses. I was sanding the lies down to the bare wood. By midnight, the seat frame was smooth under my palm. I shut the garage light, went back inside, and locked the folder in place. As I turned off the lamp, I caught my reflection in the darkened window. Jaw hard, eyes clear, posture steady. A man who finally knew what he was standing on. Lauren thought she was writing a story behind my back. She didn't realize I was already turning her chapters into exhibits. Rumors disappear. Ink doesn't. By Thursday morning, the folder was thick enough to bend the lockbox lid. But I hadn't raised my voice once. That was new for me. Most men I knew would have cracked a beer, called a buddy, and planned something stupid before the phone went flat. Instead, I drove across town to the one person who'd survived worse storms than this, my mother, Martha Bennett. Her apartment smelled like Folgers and laundry soap. She lived on the second floor of a brick building with a view of the parking lot. But she always called it her lantern perch, said she liked seeing comings and goings. I knocked twice, and she opened the door in her robe, hair pulled back, sharp as ever at 72. "You look like hell, Mark," she said. No hug, no fuss, just the truth. I followed her in, sat at the small kitchen table I'd refinished for her last Christmas. The wood still gleamed under the morning light. She poured us both coffee, black, and slid the mug toward me. Her hands were small, veins like roads, but steady as they'd been when she stitched my torn jeans as a boy. I told her everything: the black bag, the toothbrush, the laptop, the hotel threads, Ethan Blake's name written like a stain across our marriage. I didn't embellish, didn't dramatize, just facts laid out on the table like lumber waiting to be measured. She listened, nodding slow, her eyes sharp behind those bifocals. When I finished, she reached across the table and tapped my calloused palm with one finger. "Matches," she said. I frowned. "What?" "Your father was a matchman. Quick flare, big smoke, then nothing but the smell of something burnt. He'd slam doors, break plates, storm out. But when the air cleared, he had nothing to show but ashes. You're not your father, Mark. You don't need matches." I let her words sit. She sipped her coffee, then leaned closer. "Lanterns, that's what you need. Anger is fire, but it doesn't have to blind you. Put it behind glass, add a handle, and carry it steady. That way you don't just burn. You light the way." I thought about the folder locked under the truck title. Evidence, not outbursts. Paper, not punches. I realized I was already holding a lantern. I just hadn't named it yet. I don't want to look weak, I admitted. Her laugh was dry, sharp. Weak? Son, weakness is letting someone else script your story. You've already drawn the line. Now hold it steady. Don't turn this into theater. Don't feed the gossip. Just keep the light on until they can't pretend it's dark anymore. I stared into my mug, the coffee cooling but still bitter. She was right. I'd seen too many men go nuclear, slam into bars, post rants online, torch their own dignity just to prove they were hurt. And what did it get them? Sympathy from strangers, maybe, but no respect. Lantern's guide, I repeated, more to myself than her. She nodded. That's it. You've got the proof. Don't waste it on a performance. Use it when it counts. Move steady. Let their own shadows do the work. We sat in silence for a while, just the hum of the fridge and the distant bark of a dog outside. For the first time since that black bag hit the counter, my shoulders eased. When I stood to leave, she touched my arm. Mark, you're not broken. Don't let her trick you into thinking you are. You've got hands that build, eyes that see true. Use them. I drove the long way home, past the high school football field, the diner where Lauren and I once sat in a booth and mapped out our future on napkins, past the hardware store where I'd bought the first set of tools with my name on the receipt. Every stoplight was a memory, every corner a reminder that life isn't just built in bedrooms and kitchens. It's built in all the places where you choose each other or don't. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I knew what came next. No bar scenes, no midnight speeches, no fists through drywall, just steady hands, steady steps, and a lantern to light every one of them. I unlocked the garage, looked at the unfinished rocking chair, and ran my hand across the smooth oak. My father would have splintered it to pieces by now. But me? I picked up the sandpaper and kept smoothing. Matches blind, lantern's guide, and I was done being blind. Tommy Ruiz had been feeding me little details all week. He worked nights at the fire station, but his brother-in-law bartended at O'Malley's, and that meant he saw who sat where, who ordered what, and who strutted like they owned the place. Ethan Blake had a routine. Pulled up in the same silver Audi, took the corner booth by the mirror, ordered whiskey neat but never finished it. He wasn't drinking, he was rehearsing. I parked 2 blocks away and walked in through the side door. The place smelled like fried wings and old beer, familiar enough to feel like home turf. I didn't take the corner. I took the stool at the far end, where I could watch him in the mirror without staring him down. He was exactly what Tommy described. Hairstyled like he was still trying out for a college fraternity. Shirt collar stiff. Phone face up on the table as if someone cared who was texting him. He laughed too loud at nothing, checked his reflection more than his drink. I ordered a draft and nursed it slowly, letting him perform for the room. My anger wanted to cut in to expose him right there, but that would have been a match. Instead, I waited for the lantern moment. When he finally stood to leave, I slipped off the stool and intercepted him by the door. No crowd, no stage, just 2 men under the weak glow of a neon sign. Ethan, I said, voice calm. He blinked, caught off guard. Mark, hey, didn't expect. I know, I cut in. You weren't expecting me. You were expecting her. But here I am. His jaw worked like he was chewing glass. He glanced around, checking if anyone was watching. Nobody was, just us. I stepped closer, not aggressive, not threatening, just steady. You think you're winning something. You're not. You're a mirror. That's all. He frowned. What's that supposed to mean? I leaned in, kept my tone low. She's not with you because you're special. She's with you because you reflect the attention she wants. Take that away, and you're nothing but another man wasting his nights in a bar. His face flushed, the shine slipping. For the first time, he wasn't smirking. He was calculating. Doubt crept in, the kind no pep talk fixes. I clapped him lightly on the shoulder, the way men do when they close a deal. You're not my conquest, Ethan. You're just the mirror she picked up to avoid looking at herself. Think about that next time you pour whiskey you can't finish. Then I walked past him and out into the night. The cool air hit me like a reset. I didn't need to swing, I didn't need to shout. Gratitude had done what ego never could. It cut him down clean, left him standing in his own reflection. Back in the truck, I gripped the wheel and let the silence settle. He wasn't in the real fight. He was just another piece of the script. And now the script had a hole in it. In a town like ours, people don't trade in headlines. They keep ledgers. Not written ones, but invisible columns they carry in their heads, balancing who shows up and who cashes out. When trouble hits, the ledger starts ticking. By the following Sunday, mine was already being tallied. Mrs. Dorsey, who sold tomatoes out of her garden stand near the square, slipped an extra one into my bag with a smile that was half pity, half prayer. "You doing all right, Mark?" she asked. "Better than you think," I said, steady. At the deli, Joe wrapped my order tighter than usual, double paper, string pulled neat. He didn't say anything, but his nod was heavy, like a handshake he didn't want to offer out loud. The neighbors slowed their walks when I was mowing and offered questions that weren't really questions. "You holding up? The house seems quiet." They already knew. In small towns, the story walks ahead of you like a shadow. I didn't hide from it. I didn't lock myself away or dodge their eyes. I mowed the lawn, stacked firewood, went to church, shook hands, and answered everything with calm sentences that carried farther than gossip ever could. "She made her choice," I said once when pressed. That was enough. The truth was, I didn't need to raise my voice. The ledger did the work for me. People add things up: who cheats, who lies, who keeps showing up anyway. They notice when a man still carries himself like a man even after being cut down. At night, I'd sit on the porch, a beer sweating in my hand, and watch headlights pass on the county road. Every pair of them was another set of eyes that knew something. Lauren thought this was a secret game, but in a town this size, secrets are just debts waiting to be called. The phone kept buzzing. Lauren's texts came in waves. Little apologies, followed by defenses, followed by silence, then apologies again. Brittany chimed in too, long paragraphs about moving forward and not living in the past. I answered none of it. Silence is a hammer, you hit once and let the echo do the rest. At church, Pastor Reynolds shook my hand a beat too long. "Good to see you here, Mark." He didn't say why. He didn't have to. Everyone in the pews could feel it, the ledger at work, quiet as gravity. After service, I drove out to the park and walked the trails alone. I thought about how pressure doesn't always roar. Sometimes it builds in silence, like water behind a dam. Lauren hadn't felt it yet. She was still in the middle of her story, convinced she had room to improvise. But the town was already writing her chapter without her. I didn't need revenge blogs, bar fights, or angry voicemails. All I needed was to keep showing up, keep cutting my lines straight, keep holding the boundary I'd set in that kitchen. The weight of consistency is heavier than any scream. That week, work started picking up again. People who wouldn't normally call asked if I could look at a deck, fix a cabinet, replace a door frame. They wanted to put bread in my pocket, and I knew why. They'd done the math. They knew who built and who burned. Every job I took, I showed up early, cleaned up after myself, left it better than I found it. Not for Lauren. Not to prove anything. For me. For the ledger. One night, Tommy came by with a six-pack. We sat in the garage, the rocking chair frame between us, both of us staring at it like it had the answers. He cracked a beer, handed it over, and said, "You're handling this better than most. Matches burn out," I told him. "Lanterns last." He grinned, raised his bottle. To lanterns, then. We drank in the sawdust air. Two men who understood that sometimes the quietest moves echo the loudest. By the end of that week, I didn't need to say a word. The community had already spoken for me, written my side of the ledger in acts of small kindness. Extra tomatoes, careful wrapping, steady nods. Lauren thought she could spin her story into something romantic, maybe even noble. But in this town, actions are louder than adjectives. And she was already overdrawn. Ethan asked me to meet him at the coffee shop on Main, the kind of place where the chalkboard menu tries too hard and the barista has more piercings than smiles. He looked smaller in daylight, less polished without the dim bar lighting to cover his edges. His Audi was parked crooked, a man in too much hurry to hide his nerves. I slid into the seat across from him, dropped a plain manila envelope on the table, and ordered black coffee. He didn't touch his drink. "You already know why I asked you here," he said, eyes flicking to the envelope. "Yeah," I said, "because you're realizing this isn't a story you get to keep writing." I pulled out a single sheet, one of Lauren's drafts. The heading read, "If he asks." Lines of excuses, rehearsed and cowardly, laid out like dialogue for a school play. "You think she's moving in? Think she's divorcing me and marrying you?" I leaned forward, my voice steady. "Read this. She's been selling you a role, same as me. The only difference is I'm not buying anymore." His hands trembled as he skimmed it. Whatever swagger he had at O'Malley's evaporated. That night, just after dusk, I followed his car out to the lake overlook. It was Lauren's favorite spot. She thought the reflection of the lights on the water made her feel cinematic. When I pulled up, she was already there, leaning against Ethan's hood like she was waiting for a director to call action. Her eyes lit up when she saw me. "Mark, what are you doing here?" "Finishing what you started," I said, stepping into the glow of the headlights. Ethan stood rigid, the script paper still folded in his pocket. He glanced at her, then at me, and his silence told the whole story. He wasn't choosing her. He wasn't choosing anything. Lauren's voice sharpened. "This is between us. You don't get to." I cut her off, opening the folder on the hood of my truck. Page after page of printed hotel confirmations, text threads with Brittany, draft excuses, all laid out in neat stacks. Evidence under the open sky. "This isn't between us," I said. "It's documented. Timelines, dates, messages. You didn't just make a mistake. You built a whole plan." She reached for performance, her voice catching, her eyes wet, the kind of act that once worked on me. But when her hand touched the papers, I pulled them back. "No more acting. No more excuses. Remember what I told you? The moment that hotel door clicks, we end." "Well, you clicked it. We're done." Ethan shifted his weight, eyes down. "Lauren," he muttered. "I'm not moving in. I'm not. This isn't." His voice trailed off. She turned on him, panic flashing. "You said." He shook his head. "I didn't sign up for this." And just like that, the triangle collapsed. Ethan bowed out without a fight, retreating to his car, tail lights shrinking down the county road. That left her and me, standing under the buzzing headlights, the lake stretching dark and still behind us. "You can't just walk away," she said, voice cracking. "I already did," I answered. I slid the folder back into the envelope, tucked it under my arm, and stepped closer. "You wanted one night. You took it. But don't confuse permission with absolution. You cashed out the second you picked up that bag." She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Maybe she didn't. The man who used to bend, who used to swallow his pride, was gone. What stood in front of her now was solid oak, cut square, sanded true. I turned and left her standing by the lake, framed in headlights she thought would flatter her. But in the ledger of this town, in the daylight of truth, she was out of lines. Divorce court isn't a place for speeches. It's fluorescent lights, worn carpet, and the faint smell of old paper. People walk in expecting justice or drama, but what they get is arithmetic. Who owns what? Who pays whom? Who walks out lighter or heavier than they came in? Lauren showed up with a lawyer I didn't recognize. A young guy in an expensive suit who introduced himself as a specialist in family law. His hair was perfect, his smile thin, and his briefcase heavy with adjectives. Across the aisle, Tom Bradley leaned over to me. Old school attorney, gray at the temples, glasses sliding down his nose. "Don't worry," he muttered. "Judges don't weigh adjectives. They weigh proof." The judge walked in, and pens started clicking like triggers no one wanted to fire. Lauren's lawyer opened with a flood of words. Betrayal, emotional distress, stability, fairness. He painted me as the rigid husband, unwilling to bend, the man whose controlling nature drove his wife into another man's arms. I didn't flinch. Bradley didn't either. He waited for the tide of adjectives to run dry, then slid the manila folder across the table. Exhibit A, he said. His voice was calm, but it carried. Email confirmations of hotel stays spanning 6 months. The judge adjusted his glasses. Exhibit B, Bradley continued. Chat logs between Mrs. Miller and her friend Brittany Carter, explicitly discussing concealment of these meetings and the preparation of excuses. Exhibit C, a draft document titled If He Asks, written by Mrs. Miller herself, outlining fabricated explanations for her absence. He stacked the pages neatly, each one landing like a hammer strike. Lauren's lawyer tried to object, but the judge cut him off. Let's see the documents. Silence filled the room as the judge read. The only sound was the rustle of paper and the occasional squeak of his chair. Lauren shifted in her seat, biting her lip, eyes darting between me and the bench. When he finished, the judge set the papers down. Mrs. Miller, these are your writings? Her voice was small. Yes, but no adjectives, the judge said. Just yes or no. She wilted. Yes. Bradley leaned back, hands folded. The ledger had just been entered into record. The rest of the hearing was short. No alimony. A fair equity split of the house. My tools are untouched. No emotional damages. Just numbers square and true. Lauren's lawyer tried one last angle, pleading for sympathy, painting her as a woman under pressure. The judge shook his head. You don't come to this court with prepared lies and walk out with pity. Settlement stands. Pens clicked again, signatures scrawled, the sound of endings formalized. When we stepped outside, October air hit me like the first meal after a fast. Crisp, sharp, necessary. Bradley tucked his folder under his arm and gave me a rare smile. Documentation, restraint, and presence. That's how you win. I shook his hand. Appreciate it, Tom. He nodded. Don't thank me. You did the hard part. You didn't light matches. You carried a lantern. As he walked away, I stood on the courthouse steps, the folder light in my hands now that the burden had shifted. Around me, the town moved on. Cars passing, people heading to lunch, a woman pushing a stroller across the street. To them, it was just another case on the docket. To me, it was the first real breath I'd taken in months. I looked up at the gray sky and let the October wind cut across my face. It didn't sting. Fed me. No theater. No scene. Just numbers, ink, and the kind of clean break a man can build a future on. The house sold faster than I expected. A young couple with a baby on the way walked through the rooms with eyes full of plans, and I let them have it. I didn't linger on the memories. That place had already been emptied long before the boxes left. I took my share and bought a cabin near the state park, one with a tin roof that sang in the rain and a porch that faced the morning sun. Smaller, simpler, but mine. Every board, every nail, every creak in the floor spoke only to me. On the first Saturday, I unpacked the rocking chair frame I'd carried from the old garage. The oak had waited patiently, like it knew this was the place it was meant to be finished. I set it up on the porch, tools laid out, and worked steady. Each slat fit true, each joint tightened without fight. By noon, it stood complete, the grain catching light like fire through glass. I loaded it into the truck and drove it across town to my mother's apartment. When I carried it up the stairs and set it down in her kitchen, she ran her hands over the armrest, tracing the smoothness like it was scripture. She didn't cry out loud, just quiet tears, the kind Goodwood deserves. Lantern, she whispered, rocking once, slow and steady. That was enough. Work found me in ways I didn't expect. Neighbors called, strangers recommended me, and jobs stacked up. Not because I advertised, but because I showed up. People remembered who kept his head when it was expensive to do so. Ethan left town within a month. The Audi disappeared, his swagger gone with it. Lauren's name stopped appearing on my phone, then in conversations, then anywhere at all. She'd written herself out of the ledger. Mornings in the cabin are quiet, but not lonely. I wake early, brew coffee on the old percolator, step onto the porch, and watch the fog lift off the pines. The silence isn't emptiness. It's space that finally fits. Some nights, I think about the black bag she set on the counter. How heavy it looked, how final. Back then, I thought that bag was the end of me. Turns out it was just the start. I measure twice now, not just in wood but in life. Every cut square, every choice true. That's the way you build something that lasts. I don't need performances. I don't need second chances wrapped in lies. I need mornings like this, steady hands, and a chair that doesn't wobble when you lean into it. Quiet isn't a weakness. Quiet is strength that doesn't waste itself on smoke. And this time, the lantern's mine.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.